Now, if you're ambitious, and I mean really ambitious, then there's a good chance that the goals and the things that you achieve look and feel like a mountain to climb. And in my experience working with a ton of entrepreneurs over the last 20 years, this mountain in front of them can lead to overwhelm and inaction. Some people call this procrastination. So in this video, I'm going to tell you how I eat an elephant, have crushed my overwhelm, and pretty much never procrastinate. So when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, maybe about 6 or 7 years old, I remember my mother having a home-based business. And so she would make these golden bows that you would put on top of presents and gifts. And they would come in these singular strips, about 5 or 6 of them, and you would put them together and stick them down and they would turn into a bow. I remember these boxes coming and there was an empty box right next to me, and we needed to fill those strips, create the bows, and fill up the empty box. This looked like, to an 8-year-old, the biggest mountain to climb. The reason why I was happy to do it was because I was spending quality time with my mother. And each time I made a bow, I would throw one in, she'd throw one in, we'd talk, we'd laugh, we'd watch TV, and before I knew it, that empty box started to fill, and within a few hours, could have taken the whole day, that box was full. And I remember the collection guy coming to pick up the box, and it was happy days. A few years later, when my parents bought me my first computer, which was a Commodore 16, and I had no idea how to code, I would get computer magazines from the shop. They had chunks of code in it which allowed me to play bat and ball, and if it didn't work, I'd have to go in and check all the code to see what I got wrong. But doing that over and over again made me comfortable with code and technology. Fast forward 20 years or so, I now decide out of nowhere that I'm going to run the marathon, and then spent the next 5 months pretty much running every day in preparation for the London Marathon. And I remember on the day starting out wanting to get a target of just under 4 hours. And if anyone has run the marathon, you know that the 0.2 at the end of the 26.2 miles is meaningful. So I get to Pall Mall and I can see the flags and all the people at the end, and I'm thinking this is the finish. And as I get to the end of Pall Mall, I can see that there's a turning, which is the 0.2 miles. And that 0.2 miles was like hell. I was zigzagging, I almost lost my sight, and I crossed the line at exactly 4 hours dead. But in that process, it taught me that really I was just putting one foot in front of the other during my training and during that 26.2 miles. So in those instances, whether I was a child or I was a grown adult running the marathon, I knew that taking bite-sized chunks out of that task made it something that was absolutely achievable. So the question is, why doesn't everyone do that? So looking at the work of Professor Fuschia Sirois of the University of Durham has said that procrastination isn't about time management. Procrastination is about mood management. And so our ability to complete tasks, especially big ones, are often due to the way we feel about that task. And those feelings lead us to thinking, are we going to fail if we try? And if we are, then our future self is going to look really stupid. So let's just take a step back for a minute and quote unquote procrastinate. As Sirois explains, every person faces stressful situations, demanding tasks that trigger brain activity that involves a brain region known as the amygdala. And it is the amygdala that processes emotions and signal threats, capable of prompting a fight or flight response linked to procrastination. So this means that we are wired to be sensitive to the negative consequences of our actions, leading to more negative emotions and therefore procrastination. And there's an idea which psychologists present, which is how close we are to our future self. So essentially, if you don't feel that you have the skills or the mentality or the courage to complete the task today, you then think, well, my future self, who I'm a little bit distant to, is a bit of a superhero. So in a few weeks, a few months, maybe a few years, I'll have what it takes to complete that task. But in reality, unless you're doing something deliberate which changes your skill set or your mindset, your future self is probably going to be quite close to the way you are now. So Professor Sirois suggests that there are 2 ways that we can handle procrastination and crush our overwhelm. Those 2 ways are self-compassion and cognitive reframing. Now, if you're a human being, chances are you're going to be pretty hard on yourself if things go wrong, which means that if you have a goal or something you want to achieve, then you might consider what happens if it doesn't work out, and how am I going to feel about it? Am I going to beat myself up? Am I going to feel like a failure? Is everyone going to be laughing at me? But what you've got to do is be compassionate, but give yourself a break. Things go wrong all the time. Even the biggest companies in the world drop the ball. And so instead of getting the job done, we spin our wheels thinking about all of the negative consequences. But it's a bit like this YouTube channel. I want it to be a success, but I'm not focused on the metrics of success. All I'm focused on is creating the best video I can each time I sit down in front of this camera. And so I'm focusing on the thing in in front of me and I'm really leaning into the journey of YouTube instead of worrying about what the outcome could be. Because I know, and experience has taught me, that if I put everything into the next step, be it the bows and filling up that box, be it analyzing the code and playing bat and ball, or literally putting one foot in front of each other and running the marathon, that if I focus on making sure that each step is done as well as possible, that the outcome I'm looking for will be the one that I really want. So really do the task without becoming emotionally attached to the outcome. My youngest son in the last year and a half has got into acting, and he's been in theatre, TV, he's done lots of voiceovers, but because he's young and because we're new to it and the stakes are high, we've gone into it saying that, look, we are not attached to the outcome, and actually just the experience of going through auditions, the experience of self-taping for a child is really great learning. Whether you get the job or not isn't something that we want you to be emotionally attached to, or we as parents want to be emotionally attached to. So it means that you can genuinely enjoy the journey, learn things along the way, and that compounds until the next experience. The last thing I would say on this, which is really great news for entrepreneurs, is that the analogy of eating an elephant isn't quite aligned with what happens in the real world. Because in the real world of entrepreneurship, as you progress and as you compound your skills, one step does not equal one step. One step can equal 5 steps, 10 steps, or 20 steps. So what do I mean by that? As your entrepreneurial muscle grows, your strides become longer, they become more impactful, you can jump further, you can move faster with the same level of movement. So in practical terms, what may have taken you a week 5 years ago might take you a day today. And as you start onboarding a team, the organization that you're running, instead of relying on the 40 or 60 or 80 hours a week that you're working, is now benefiting from 40 hours a week from multiple individuals. And so the compound effect of your experience, each time you take a bite out of that elephant, massively accelerates your growth as an entrepreneur and your organization. And that's it for today's video, guys. If you'd like more content on business and entrepreneurship, then please like, comment, subscribe, and click the notification bell for the algorithm, and I will catch you next time. Ultra and out.